Scarboro 85 story will now be a part of the curriculum in schools starting in 2026. So you all are the first people to kind of hear this story, and it's going to be in the U.S. history classes and African American history classes. And so you all being the first people that I get to touch base with that are in those classes as high school students, I really want you to listen, but I also want you to think about, what am I missing? What things do I need to have, in here? What things do need to make sure that I am saying, not just me, but make sure the curriculum is saying, so that students will be able to understand this story, and teachers will be able to teach this story in a way that will be important. So I hope that you will help us on that journey. Is that okay? Y'all willing to do that? All right. And it's okay to respond to me. I'm okay. I really love to have y'all here. So I'm just going to start, and then we'll just see where we go. Once upon a time. Isn't that a great way to start a story? Once upon a time there was a king, and the king was a king of a great nation. But he began to think to himself. He thought, I want to have the ability to create some things that when I want more power, I can use those things. And so he gathered his leaders together and said, can we create some things so that when I want more power, then I can use those things to create more power? And his leaders said, oh yeah, that would be good. He said, I don't want people to know that I'm creating these things. He said, so can we build a secret city? And the leaders said, yeah, that's a good idea. We'll build a secret city and create things that you can use if you want more power. And so they began to mobilize and strategize and create the secret city. But they found that they needed more help. And they needed help to do some of the more labor-intensive things and demeaning things. And so they thought, and they said, well, we don't want to get people like us. We should do the good things. We will get people that we feel are inferior to us, those that are less than us. And so they went to get them. And they brought them in, and those people worked. But at the end of the day, the leaders were like, we don't want to see them. We don't want to be a part of them. We'll build for them a secret city and place them there so we do not have to have them participate in the heartbeat of our city. And so it was that the king was happy because he had built a good secret city. And so it was that the leaders were happy that they too had created a secret city. But some secrets are not meant to be kept. And some secrets should be brought into the light of day. And so it is. When I first came here in 2021 to begin work on the Scarboro 85, I didn't know anything really about Secret City. And I will tell you, it is very strange to be a visitor or a first-time person coming down the road, and there's a sign, a billboard before the city that says, what you see here, what you hear here, what you say here will stay here. That's just, you're kind of worried about what kind of town you're going to go into that is such a secret like that. I had no idea there was the Manhattan Project here. I had no idea, so it was just different for me. Well, I first wanted to learn about Oak Ridge itself. That was my first intention, to just learn a little bit about the town. I met Ray Smith, who's an historian. He's over there filming me and such like that. That's why he's not turning around looking at y'all. But that's Ray Smith, and he does a lot of articles in the newspaper, and he's really smart about this place. So if you're doing a paper and it has anything to do with Oak Ridge and you need some help, he's the man to contact, all right? And he really will help you out in great ways. So I got with Ray Smith and a man whose name is Charles Crow, who works with the Flatwater Storytelling Festival, and we went over to the Oak Ridge Museum. Now, how many of y'all know that the Oak Ridge Museum used to be called the Wildcat Den? How many of y'all know that? The Wildcat Den was the area where everybody who was in high school used to hang out at. It was the building for the hangout. So I just want to make sure you know there is importance for you, at least historical importance to you all here. So I went to the museum, and when I got there, Ray, with a great smile on his face, was so excited to show me one of the things he loved. And that is, when you walk in the museum, there's this panoramic view all the way from one end of the building, the main area, one end of the one wall over here, all the way to there's this view. And it's an aerial view of Oak Ridge from 1944. I think I got the year right this time. 1944. And it's looking down on us. It's huge. It's a beautiful picture. It really is. And so he said, and Sheila, over here where the African Americans lived was in Gamble Valley, right in this area here. And I said, there? He said, yeah, here. I said, off the picture? He said, yes, yeah, right here, behind these trees. And I said to him, that was planned. That was intentional. To put them in a place behind the trees, in a different, what they call Ridge Valley, where there was no connection with them. I said, and where is the Scarboro community that is right now? And he said, it's over here, off the picture, behind the trees. And I said, that was a secret as well. Scarboro, the Scarboro community was really put away and aside from Oak Ridge. In the 1940s, 1950s, if you were a white citizen of Oak Ridge, you could live your entire life here and never interact or talk to an African American person. Your entire life. Well, you all can imagine that because you go to school with people. I mean, at least every day you probably have to at least walk by somebody that is not of the same race as you are. And that's because of part of what the story is about. But in those years, that could happen. Now, it was not possible for the African American community to have the same thing because they had to come out from behind those trees, and they worked in the factories and the places. They had no choice but to have interaction. But it was a planned thing to keep out of sight Scarboro community. And the Scarboro community was and is, it was a thriving community. They had their own things. They had a roller skating rink. They had stores, beauty shops, auto parts, and they had something, they called it the block. It was the call of the block. That's where everybody said, we're going down to the block. They had a club there, and they would have the singers that would come down. Many of the singers that would come there were singers that would come, they were singers that crossed throughout the country in the South, and they would go to small towns. And they were black singers, African-American singers, that oftentimes couldn't sing on the bigger stages. And so they would come to these little places, and they had a club there that they would get a chance to do that at. And so it had its own block, it had its own thriving place. And it went from being called Gamble Valley to being called Scarboro, partly because of the school that had been purchased that had once been called Scarboro, where they were on that side of Gamble Valley, and then when they got here, they decided to call that area Scarboro, after where they had been before. Had their own school. Their own school. Now, I'm certain you all know that this school is not the original school of Oak Ridge High School. Everybody's there with me on that? But it was still a pretty good-sized school. Scarboro was a lot smaller. So it was shaped like an L. So the long part of the L, that was 1st through 8th grade. The heel of the L, that was the administration building. The short part of the L, that was the high school. Now the high school didn't start until 1950. but it was there. And when they finally had the high school there, that meant that the students from Scarboro no longer had to get up and be at the bus terminal. If you go down the bus terminal road, some of y'all might know where that is. You had to be at the bus terminal at 7 o'clock in the morning so they could take the bus to Knoxville to attend Austin Colored School in Knoxville. Can you imagine driving all that way? Because not even driving. Can any of y'all imagine having to come from Knoxville every day to come to school here? Is there anybody, somebody can imagine? You do that right now? Is it an easy ride? It's not. It's not fun. I love that. So you do that right this second. So you are living the reverse side of that for the students. And thank you for letting me know that. That's really good to know that that happens, even still. And yet you have your own car, which is, I'm assuming, and you don't have to take the bus. Correct? Yes? Okay, very good. And so, but that's great. Thank you for letting me know that. That's good information. Let's mark that down. That's good. All right. So that's what the students had to do, but now they had their own school. They could just walk to school. And in Scarboro, all the roads that they would walk down, every road is named after a historically black college or university. Everyone. Is there anyone that lives in the Scarboro community at this point in time, right now, in here, that's in here? Okay, yeah, back to the back, all right. And what street do you live on? You don't know what street you live on? Oh, not now. Okay, very good. I'm sorry? Okay, no problem. But if you went down, you would see the different roads are named after historically black colleges and universities, and that was purposeful because the idea of education was foundational in the black community as a whole, but specifically in Scarboro. And the expectation was you would take your education and you would go further. You might come back home, you might not, but you would go further. And that is what was there. A thriving community, a good school, all that was existing. We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome someday. Well, overcoming, water. Okay, hold on. I don't know what's behind me anymore. Here we go. So, overcoming was happening. 1954. Yeah, that was kind of fun. It's like, what is behind me? All right. 1954. What happened in 1954? Anybody? Somebody? 1954, history class, make your history teachers happy. Somebody, yes. Some? Brown versus the Board of Education, excellent. And teachers are like going, like there's something got through, amen. So, Brown versus the Board of Education, Supreme Court decision that said that all schools, that separate but equal was no longer acceptable. No longer acceptable. And that you were to desegregate the schools at a deliberate speed. We were overcoming. African Americans were overcoming. It was going to be a new world. We were going to integrate the schools. It was going to be equality. And nah. It wasn't going to happen like that. So before I go any further to tell more of the story, I have to tell you the difference in two words. Because sometimes we use them interchangeably, but they really aren't interchangeable. Integration, desegregation. So integration is that I take a group from one place. Is there another high school that's close by here, or is there another? What? Okay, Oliver Springs. Okay. So, integration would be, I would take a group of students from Oliver Springs and put them here, and I take a group of students from here, Oak Ridge, and put them in Oliver Springs, and that is integration, where we kind of combine the schools. All the resources are kept, even maybe added resources to either of the schools, but they're kept. Desegregation is, today, or as of such and such a time, there will be no more Oak Ridge High School. It will end. And now you will attend Oliver Springs High School. Every person in here. And there is not a choice. How many of y'all are ready to do that right now? Oh, there's some major like, oh, I ain't have. Some people are like, well, it might be okay, but probably not like it needs to happen. Like if you're in your senior year, you're like, whew, it doesn't have to happen to me. But if you're about to go into your senior year, all the traditions you wanted, everything that you planned for, all the teachers you knew and the friends you knew, and not just friends, because some of those will go with you, but the teachers you knew, the building you knew, the places you knew, the traditions and culture you have here. You're no longer Wildcats, you'll be what? Huh? Bobcats. That's depressing. You'll go from a Wildcat to a Bobcat. That's just, I don't know. It doesn't feel good. And you'd have to start saying, go Bobcats. And it probably would try to come out your mouth and you're like, ooh, that's, ooh. You know, it wouldn't feel wrong. Because you would lose what you have. This is what happened when the Scarboro 85 were desegregating the Oak Ridge public schools. 6th graders to 12th graders. We are not afraid. We are not afraid. We are not afraid today. Deep in my heart, I do believe. We are not afraid. We're not afraid today. Except he was afraid. They had overcome, but he was still filled with fear. The boy woke up early, got down to where the bus stop, started walking to where the bus stop was. He often got there early. He met his best friend there along the way. Usually his best friend and him, they talked and joked, and sometimes one of them would run to Miss Margaret's store, pick up some candy, make sure the bus slows down so I can get to it. But not today. Today the students, those two, they saw each other, they commiserated together. There was misery there because today the boy would go to Oak Ridge High School as a 9th grader. And his best friend would go to Robertsville Junior High School as an 8th grader. He felt in his pockets and he made sure that the money and coins were there. You see, his family made enough money where when they rode the school bus, which was a city bus, he had to pay. And that was so different because it used to be he just walked to school. They arrived where all the other students were. Some of the students talked amongst each other. Some had met some of the white students from Oak Ridge High School because they had come from their journalism class and had come to Scarboro and introduced themselves and learned about the school. They seemed to be kind and genuine. Had the students read the article or talked to one of those kids that had come to their school, they would have heard one of those Oak Ridge High School students say, "Why do they not have what we have?" Saw clearly the discrepancy of resources. But they didn't hear those words. So they talked amongst themselves. And then there were others that were young. They were 11 years old. And they had just left 5th grade. And all they had wanted to do was go in their school to 6th grade. This is the school, the classroom up, they knew that. But here they were at a bus stop as 6th graders, as 11 years old. Some of them with money in their pocket to put on a bus, to go on the city bus for the first time without their parents. And they were afraid and worried. They finally got on the bus, and the bus became very quiet. The boy watched as they went down Wilberforce and turned onto Tuskegee, and there he thought to himself, I wonder if I'm going to be like those Tuskegee airmen from World War II. Maybe I will be the one to fight for freedom and liberty. And then he shook his head. Maybe not. He continued thinking as they went out of his area as a community, and he thought about the words that his parents had said to him since he was a boy. You see, his family was from Mississippi, as it was with so many African Americans. Whereas in the town of Oak Ridge, white citizens from Oak Ridge were from all over the country. African American citizens of Oak Ridge were from Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia, and Tennessee. All places where segregation, which was in Oak Ridge, was normal. All places where knowing your place was normal. And his parents had said, even while he was in Mississippi, had told him these things that he remembered now. Keep your eyes down. Don't look into the eyes of a white person. Stay towards the wall. You make your show. Don't bump anybody by accident. Be mannerly in your ways. Speak only when necessary. But do your work well. You have to do it doubly well to be noticed. And be safe. Be safe. The bus finally pulled up in front of Oak Ridge High School. And there were white students outside waiting to help people get to their classrooms. And that should have made him feel safe and welcome. But he was neither. He knew that there would be students inside that didn't want him there. And he didn't want to offend. And that made him unsafe in his feeling, because this boy, this 14-year-old African-American boy, young man, was entering into a place he knew that many people did not want him, and he was entering into this place 10 days after the body of Emmett Till was found. Emmett Till. Emmett Till was from Chicago. He was a city boy. And his mama thought that summer that he was going to get into too much trouble hanging out in Chicago. So she put him on the train and said, you're going down south. That was very, very common, to send your children down south to the family you had down there. And so to Money, Mississippi, he was sent. He worked with his uncles. They even picked a little cotton, and he got to be around them. And he thought, I'm the city boy. And he thought about how they were so different than him. But he loved being with his cousins. They went to a store. And it was a store run by a white person. And he went into the store, and on his way out the store, they say it was purported that he spoke to the white woman that was there, or maybe he winked, or maybe he whistled. Nobody was quite sure, but whatever, she took offense. And later, after he was gone with his cousins, later this woman told her husband. And her husband was furious. Furious that a black boy would do or say or possibly think something about his wife. And he gathered his posse. And he went to that house, And he called for him to come out, and his uncle tried to say it wasn't, meaning he's not. Bring him out. He wouldn't bring him out, and they went in and got him, took him out of the house. The uncle hoped that what they would do is they might teach him a lesson. They might beat him a little bit. They might kick him a little bit. They might, push him around a little bit, but they bring him back. In the morning, Emmett wasn't back. And by the evening, Emmett wasn't back. And that's when his mother had to be called. And then his body floated up in the river. It had been placed in a fan to help weight the body down. And when they found that body, his face was so disfigured, not just from water, but from the beating, that he was unrecognizable, an entire eye completely out. Had he not been wearing his father's ring, a ring from the father that had died, had not been wearing that ring, his mother would not have been able to identify him. So this 14-year-old African-American boy who was about to enter into a place called Oak Ridge High School, where he knew people, so many didn't want him. He was afraid. And he had reason to be. He walked through, as some students did, many students walked through their time in the school quietly. He was shown to his classroom. He went in, he greeted the teacher properly. The teacher pointed to the back where his chair was, and he wondered, was this what it would be like every day? And for some students, it was. He made sure to stay close to the walls. He kept himself from going from concentrated places around corners. Sometimes he walked outside this building, outside of his own building, to go all the way around outside to get to his next class so he wouldn't bump into anybody. He wouldn't offend. Some students got involved. Some students joined the student council, were part of the National Honor Society. Some had friends, white friends that they made that became friends for life. And some joined the basketball team. 3, to be exact, actually. They joined the basketball team. Is there anybody in here that's on the basketball team? Anybody in here on the football team? All right, good. Anybody here on a team? All right, good. Now, I want you to think, those of you who are on a team, how many of y'all have to practice when it is your season? How many of y'all have to practice at least twice a week? How many of y'all have to practice 3 times a week? 4 times a week? You're just not, somebody's not even 5 times a week. How many of y'all have to do 2-a-days when it's in the middle of the winter and summertime? Oh, I hate 2-a-days. Okay, very good. So you have to do a lot of practice. So you may not even get this, that they were practicing every day as well with their team. And when it was time to go to another school, sometimes they would get a call at home and say, the other school won't let you in. They won't let you in because of the color of your skin. So you can't come with us today. And you couldn't get even on the bus to go with your teammates. And it was not a time where your teammates chose not to play because you couldn't go. Even in this school, when other teams came here, sometimes they refused to play because you had somebody, they thought they might put them in the game. It was a big deal in December of 1955, such a big deal that the New York Times wrote about the very first time that those students played in a game. Oak Ridge School uses 2 Negroes in a basketball game. Oak Ridge, Tennessee, December 3rd, 1955. 2 Negroes went in as substitutes for Oak Ridge High School's basketball team tonight. The move marked the first break in segregation in a Tennessee school or college sporting event. A crowd of 500 persons watched the game as Powell Valley finally edged Oak Ridge 54-53. Coach Ben Martin started an all-white team. However, he sent in Fred Gwynn, Negro center, midway through the first half. Gwynn scored a foul shot 30 seconds later to clip a point off Powell Valley's 7-5 lead. Once, a few scattered boos were heard when the second Negro player, Lawrence Graham, had a foul called against him. The New York Times, that's how big a deal it was. And some students never felt quite safe, never felt quite welcomed. And so those students left after 2 or 3 months. And that is what their lives were like. But that boy knew that if it got really difficult, he could call on somebody. We're not alone. We're not alone. We are not alone. Deep in my heart, I do believe we are not alone on this day. You see, he could call in the sheriff. Yeah, I said it like that. Now the sheriff was Principal Dunnigan. You're the principal right here, sir. So you understand your role as sheriff sometimes. The Principal Dunnigan was the sheriff of that town, Oak Ridge High School, and he was clear that there wasn't going to be any trouble in his town. Yes, indeed. He knew it was right and good that the students would come together and learn. He knew it was going to happen, and it needed to happen under his watch. When those students walked in, and there on the plate glass window, somebody had put "welcome in" word, he called all the students into the auditorium. I hope you've never had to do that, sir. He called all those students in the auditorium and he said, "You will not do that again. And if I find out who does, you will be leaving." And because he was the sheriff of that town, of that school, the reality was, it was a federally funded town, this town here of Oak Ridge, and he could help your mama and daddy lose their job for acting up. And there was never anything on that plate glass window again. He was the sheriff, and he made sure as much as he could to take care of all his children. And which meant all his students, he made sure he wasn't in the office all the time. Kind of like your principal, running around the school all the time. Which means you never know when he's going to be in the wrong corner that you don't want him to be in. Yes, he was going to take care of his children. But you know, folks don't always like sheriffs. And they weren't happy about his rules in town. And so, he told his wife and his daughters, and his wife, his daughters who went here and to Robertsville Junior High School, this was right and good. And he kept saying it even after they got phone calls to their house every day. Threatening phone calls, not every day, but they got threatening phone calls, nasty phone calls, negative phone calls, and a cross burnt on his front yard. Not everybody likes a sheriff. And he did his very best to protect those children, but he couldn't protect everyone all the time. So he never heard about one of the African American students that was put into a locker every day. Students saw it, but that boy never said anything. And the other students never spoke up to help him. But he was a good sheriff. And the reality is that, well, the boy did not come unprepared. He came from a school, Scarboro School, that had a great principal, Arizona officer. She had her glasses, her thin lips, her hair up, and she was an advanced degree woman who had been assigned to make sure Scarboro School had a great education. Her and her husband were there, and they taught, and she was also kind of a guidance counselor. She brought in other teachers with advanced degrees. Oh, and did I mention? There was only one teacher that came over from Scarboro School. One. His name was Fred Brown. He taught history in the shop area. I don't know why in that area, but it was down there where the shop was. So there's been confusion about what he actually taught. But he taught history, that's what people have told me, because they had him as teacher, and he taught on the shop hall area. Now, Fred Brown, I just want to say, Fred Brown went on to go to the University of Tennessee, and they named a building. Was he the first African-American to have a building named after him?
Yeah.
First African-American to have a building named after the Brown Building over at University of Tennessee. But one teacher, and you may ask, what happened to the rest of them? They had to go find other jobs. Although they said they were going to hire teachers no matter their race, no others were hired. They were given different assignments, either at Scarboro School itself for the younger kids, or they went to Austin Colored School or other places. But Arizona officer, she prepared her students as well as she could to make sure that they could survive not just this transition here, but any transition in life. She demanded and commanded excellence and respect. She was a person that believed in knowing the families. It was a tight-knit community. It was nothing at all for her to come to your house and visit your parents. Sometimes you might like that. Sometimes you did not. And she taught her teachers to do the same. And so people knew her well. She also taught her students to dream. She took them to places, to some of the schools that were on those signs that were on the streets. She took them to see movies and to go and experience things they would have never experienced before. And the summer before they went to Oak Ridge, she called in the Congress of Racial Equality, CORE, to come and teach them, these students, how to not respond when things were said that were harmful and hurtful. They were prepared, they had allies, and they got through the year. And the black students and the white students survived through that year. They did. Some had left, yes, but they survived the year. And there were going to be a couple that graduated. There were African American students with the first class of 1956. But first, there was the prom. How many of y'all are going to is it still a junior senior prom or just a senior prom? How many of y'all are going to the junior senior prom this year? Or you think you might? Okay. Are you getting ready? Young ladies have taken out their dresses and then the young gentlemen are trying to find out what color the young ladies want them to wear. I don't know if they do that now. That used to be the way it was for us. It's like, oh no, you're not wearing that color. You got to go find something else. I don't know what that was. Thank you. All right, but amen. However you're getting ready to go and whoever you go with, that's a wonderful thing. But it's fun to get ready for the prom. It's a great rite of passage. And in 1956, they were going to have the first integrated junior-senior prom in all of the southeastern states. The first one. Woo! after prom party. And, well, y'all get to have after prom festivities now? No? Well, it used to be, y'all should go back and find out how to do this. It used to be that the community's leaders would gather their money together and they would put on an after party festivity for all the students. You see, the school was working on the desegregation. It was desegregated. Outside the school, it had not changed. Blacks and whites could still not go to many of the same things. Yes, there were blacks that could go to the Wildcat Den. There was nothing barring them, but many didn't go because, well, they didn't feel welcome. There were places that they didn't go because the welcome was not there, and places they didn't go because the law said you couldn't go. Well, the people in charge of the after party were like, we know what we'll do. They collected more money, and they went to the Negro students and they said, here you go. This is for you to have your own Negro banquets. And the students accepted the money, and they gave it as a contribution to the school for the blind in their name, because they had worked too hard to be less than. That first prom, well, here it is. There we go. I'm still looking for stuff behind it. That's good. First prom. Negro pupils at dance. Written in the New York Times, May 20th, 1956. 4 Oak Ridge couples attend first integrated party. 4 Negro couples appeared last night for Oak Ridge High School's first racially integrated junior-senior prom. White pupils generally remained aloof and afterward went to a private party at an Oak Ridge hotel. 15 Negroes were eligible to attend the dance. As the first couple arrived and sat at a table, white students walked quietly away. Otherwise, there were no incidents. And this is where the African American students understood that they had not been accepted, only tolerated. School year ended, and the next year there was, desegregation, and then the next year Clinton desegregated to huge masses of problems and such there, because it wasn't a federally funded military anything. And that was 56 and 57. It was Little Rock 9. And they were trying to integrate Central High School in Little Rock, Arkansas, and that was a big deal, even the National Guard coming out. 1958, the Clinton 12 there, the Clinton had the bombing in the school there. There was violence, and everyone forgot who came here. They did. They forgot. And they changed the narrative for themselves, because what they were able to say was, well, look at us. Here in Oak Ridge, we didn't have any violence. See how good we are? We didn't have any violence. We could say, look at us. And people forgot. They forgot because the violence was what people were expecting. So the names of the people were lost. And they died in memory. But just because there is no violence does not mean there is not great harm. Violence is not the only way of harm. And those students felt great harm in losing what they had, not having the experience they wished they could have had, and walking around many times unwelcome, unsafe, and then being forgotten for being the ones who made it possible for all of us to be together. And then a man was sitting in a meeting. He had been one of the Scarboro 85, and the person who was leading the meeting said, and the first to desegregate in the Southeast was Clinton, in Clinton, Tennessee. And he got up and said, that's not true. We were the first. So began people looking and seeing. John Spratling, Coach Spratling, how many of y'all know Coach Spratling? Yes. Coach Spratling, Mrs. Weaver, Rose Weaver, Ray Smith, and others, they began to put this information together. They interviewed those who were still alive. I know 5 of the Scarboro 85 that are still alive, and 4 of them that live in this town to this day. And they begin to share their story and bring them to life. Because the reality is, we stand on their shoulders together as young people. Not just in this school, but outside of this school. They were the first to change the culture of a segregated area. We need to remember them. There's a monument that is working hard. Now, I know Mr. Buckley's class, is that Mr. Buckley, is that right?
Buckner.
Mr. Buckner's class is going to be working on part of that monument and helping to make that happen. That's pretty awesome that y'all will be a part of that. I want you to know their names. I want you to go learn about them. I want you to tell this story to more than who are in this room. That we stand on the shoulders, all of us. I couldn't speak before you without being on their shoulders. And so that's what's going to be shared. Scarboro 85 is going to be shared all over the state of Tennessee in U.S. history classes. I hope you've learned something about them. Maybe something about the history of where you are. Maybe some of your own personal history as well. And that, my dears, is the end. So they're supposed to say one thing, sing one last part. We will not forget, we will not forget, we will not forget their names. Oh, Scarboro 85, we'll keep your memory alive. Oh, we will not forget their names. Amen. All right, well, I said amen for myself. Okay, so we have a few moments before you are going to run off in the bell because lunch is going to be announced. Might you have some questions or thoughts or things that we need to make sure we're clarifying or things that worked well in telling the story of the Scarboro 85? This is your time. Yes, sir. And then over here. So over there and then over here. Yes. Yes? What was her name? Last name? The last name? Treat? Threet. Okay. All right. I gotta make sure, we gotta just make sure that we know that information. That is awesome. You are a legacy. So understand that what you do at this school represents the legacy that she brought to this school all the time. Thank you. Yes?
I can't remember if you said something, but what got you interested in learning about Scarboro?
Excellent question. What got me interested in learning about Scarboro is someone paid me some money to be able to do this. That's the truthful answer. And that is a truthful answer. To be able to commission somebody, you have to be able to give me time to be able to do the research and to be able to do that. And they were willing to make that happen so I could physically do the research in time. But once I began to learn, and after I interviewed, I spent a whole day interviewing people all day long about this and reading through books, and I was excited. And what really got me, the story was different. Because I've done work on the Little Rock Nine, and I've done work on the other parts of other places of desegregation. And I personally desegregated a school when I was 8 years old. And when I say I personally, I was it. I was desegregation. or they would have said integration. I think they were a little lost on that one. But I was desegregation at 8 years old into my elementary school, so I understood that. But I really never had a place that I had talked about where there was no violence. And it helped me to understand the great harm that was felt. And that was a different kind of story. And I wanted to make sure that story came out. Thank you so much. Great question. Other questions? I'm not letting you out here any earlier, so you might as well use your time to talk to me. So, any other questions? Any questions from teachers? Teachers might have questions. Oh, yes. That's a great question. How did research money happen? Pinnacle Bank was the main sponsor for this, for commissioning, and I think that's important to know that they're active community partners here. And Flatwater Storytelling Festival, which you all should go to. Flatwater Tales Storytelling Festival is June 7th and 8th of this year. You get to hear stories not like mine. You get to hear a whole lot of other stories as well, things that will make you laugh, and things that will make you kind of think and make you cry and all that good stuff, all the stuff in between. But though they also brought me in to tell the story in front of a larger audience. And so that was the first time we were able to do that. And now, of course, it's going to be taught in the schools. And it's pretty exciting to watch that come full circle, where everyone will get a chance to hear the story. Where that people will know what Oak Ridge is after that. Any other questions? Yes, sir. If I was to hear them what? What would you tell them if you were hearing people talk about Scarboro 85 and they didn't know about it? What would you say? I would start with, they were a forgotten group of pioneers, a forgotten group of heroes at Oak Ridge that we are now remembering for the fact that they helped to desegregate not only the schools, but our community. And that's where I would start. And then I would, say, they went through hard times. Then I could share. Some had difficulties, some didn't. It was hard, it was not easy, whatever part of that story you want to tell later. But I would start in the Scarboro 85, our group of pioneers, a group of heroes that brought desegregation of a school and of a community. And we are reviving their memory and making sure that we all know we stand on the shoulder. Something like that. Does that make sense? That works. Okay. Well, that was a really good question. And I like what I said. Make sure you write that down. Okay. So, yes, one last question. Ooh, how did I get started as a storyteller? I've been telling stories all my life, not just lies, but stories all my life. I really have. My mother would tell you I was born talking, basically. And I've been on the stage since I was 8 years old. I've been doing performances on stage and then performances by myself since I was 10. And I was in the forensics team in high school. And then I was in drama at high school. And then I was in forensics when I got to college. And then I worked at Colonial Williamsburg, and I was an interpreter in costume. And I'm an historian as well. And all that came together to be able to do. So this has been 20 years of me doing this. And if you have a dream, even though some people will say, oh, the arts, you can't make any money. Well, I pay all my bills. I've had to work hard for it. I've had to, there are times that it was hard to pay a bill, but you know what? You do the work, you put in the time, and you're excellent at what you do, and you can thrive wherever you want to thrive. You gotta do the work, gotta take the time, but you can make it happen for yourself. So, and yes, I've been to college and stuff like that, and I didn't study anything in college that was really gonna help me with this. I didn't do that, so. All right, it sounds like I have two teachers that stood and a principal, which means my time is up. Thank you so much for letting me come.